The following program is a Town of Colonie television production of the William K. Sanford Town Library.
Welcome to Getting to Know You. My name is Joe Nash. Today we're going to be talking to Art Thorman. He is a tinsmith, and he was just telling me that there are many tinsmiths in our area. He's a former teacher. You may have seen him at some historical homes like Schuyler Mansion, Prine House. He also does, when they do historical reenactors, he's the local tinsmith. He's been to crafts fairs. So welcome, Art.
Nice to be here, Joe.
So it sounds like for a tinsmith, you're everywhere.
Yeah, I try to get around, you know.
Okay.
And,
Well, okay, so you're a former teacher of American history for over 35 years, and you've been doing this for about 20, and we're going to be talking about a lot of these items, how they're made, and you know, everything from useful utensils to art. How did you get interested in being a tinsmith?
Yeah, you might not know how someone could get into something like that. I've always been interested in working with my hands, and I'm the kind of person, I'm never happy when I'm not doing something with my hands. And over the years, I've worked a lot with wood. And at some point, I found that there were classes given in the Albany area in all kinds of early American trades. Yeah. So I took a lot of classes. I took them in tinsmithing, of course, and woodworking and blacksmithing. And I just liked the tinsmithing because in woodworking, if you've ever worked in wood and you made like a piece of furniture, it might take you like 2 or 3 weeks to finish a piece. And with tinsmithing, it's almost instant gratification because I can make an object from a piece of flat sheet metal to the finished product, and depending on what I'm making, 3 or 4 hours. So that attracted me.
Oh, okay. And you learned this just by taking classes, and you got then you.
Yep, I took workshops, they call them, and if I can just say, there's a lot of them given in the Albany area.
I know you've given classes at the Adirondack Folk School, and where else do you?
Well, Adirondack Folk School in Lake Luzerne, not too far from Albany, and a place called Eastfield Village in East Nassau. That's on the other side of the Hudson River. And there are folk schools all over the place if you're interested in this kind of thing. One called the John C. Campbell Folk School in Tennessee is a really great one too. But if you're interested in this kind of thing, there are places in the area where you can learn. And
is this also, you were telling me before, you're an American history teacher. Did this somehow, it seems like you're melding two of your
Yeah, it fit in. I mean, I could bring the items into my classroom and actually talk about industry in early America, the growth of the Industrial Revolution, and it was nice because I could actually demonstrate what I was talking about.
Okay, so once you took your classes and then sort of got going on some of this, how did you decide to just go off on your own?
Well, you see, that's the funny thing. You get sucked into this, whether you like it or not. You know, I started off wanting to make like one mug, which I can't find right now.
A mug?
One
yes,
mug.
Here we go. You can show
so
that.
I got the tools to make one mug. And then I say to myself, I'm bored making mugs. I'd like to make a coffee pot. So I get another tool for the coffee pot.
There you go. Good.
Okay? And then I make a bunch of coffee pots, and I say, wouldn't it be nice to make like a candlestick? So I wind up, after a while, I'm into this like $2,000 with all these tools, and I have to buy the tin plate, and you can't buy one sheet of tin. You have to buy a whole pallet's worth. Okay. That's like another $500. Now I'm into this like $2,500, so I have to justify the expense. I have to start selling things. Okay. So then you're in it.
Well, I see where the instant gratification, these obviously don't take 3 or 4 weeks to make like furniture. You must, once you get going, I mean, we got a whole bunch of stuff here, but what do you have, a whole warehouse full of stuff?
I do. And you have to keep it moving or the place, I'm always afraid my shop's going to be by lightning. You know, the place will be like...
And you live out in Voorheesville, right?
I do.
No, like, for example, this mug here, like, how long would that take to make?
This would take maybe 40 minutes, maybe.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, then why don't we start with some of the art and the tools and how this worked.
Okay.
So you say you buy tin. You buy the tin in sheets. Is that?
Yeah, let me tell you a little bit about that. People might be interested to know what that really is.
And then before you tell me, just one quick thing.
Yeah.
You try to do it. Do you try to do this the way they did it in the 1700s?
I do.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And sometimes the 1800s.
Okay. There's no. There's no screws and nails and nuts and
Oh,
bolts.
no,
It's
no. all held together with solder.
Okay.
No lead solder for the food items, and I do use leaded solder.
And you don't use a soldering gun. You use it.
No, I can show you. I have a little furnace.
But you're the authentic.
The authentic.
Okay.
This is called a soldering copper.
All right.
Most people would call it a soldering iron.
But this is before what we know as a soldering gun kind
Right,
of.
right. No electricity back
Okay.
then. And I heat this thing up in a furnace. I use a propane furnace. They would have used a charcoal furnace.
Okay.
You can see this in operation at Old Sturbridge Village if you want to.
But when you're at a reenactment or a crafts fair, you're working as people walk by. And,
I really don't. I have tried soldering before, and people get upset because I could set the place on
Okay,
fire.
right.
So basically, I just hammer things when
Okay.
I'm demonstrating. But you heat this thing up, you pick up the solder, which I think I brought a little piece of solder here, which I didn't. You pick up the solder, and what you do, this is nice and hot, and you pick the solder, nice and hot from the furnace. You pick up solder, you put some flux over here. You need the flux so the solder will stick. It won't stick without flux. And you just go around and you melt the solder into the
what is
joint.
that? Is it like a goo or something? Or?
Well, it's just like molten metal.
Oh, okay.
It heats up at a very low temperature.
Okay.
And it never fails. You're finished, and it's leaking. So the leak's over here, so you fix the leak over here, and it starts leaking over here.
Okay.
And then, but eventually you get it.
Okay.
Depends how thirsty you are.
So did this give you an appreciation of maybe how people back then in the 1700s, people had to make everything in their house practically, or more or less.
It does give you an appreciation, and I get like almost a connection with these people. I'm using the same patterns they used. Okay. I'm using the same tools they used, and I can really get a feel for what it was like.
Okay, now did you have to do research? How did you figure out to use this kind of solder? And
well, all in those workshops that I took.
All right.
I mean, one of the things is people are handing down this knowledge so it doesn't get lost, which I do too, to the next generation.
All right. So then, all right. So what? Why don't you tell me a little bit about the sheets of tin?
Yeah, I think you might find that interesting. This is the kind of tin that I use. Okay. I don't know what gauge.
And is that how it would have been in the 1700s?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. You see, back in it all started out in the late 1500s.
Okay.
And what they discovered or invented was a way to laminate sheet iron. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is really it's a misnomer. It's not really tin. It's tin coating over iron.
Okay.
And the reason for that is the tin won't rust.
All right.
Now you don't want to make a whole object out of tin because it's very soft. Okay.
Right. So all these, like this dustpan here, it's actually tin coating over iron.
Tin
coating. That's what I thought I was reading. Okay.
Now, the way they made this back in the 15, 16, 1700s is they had a gigantic trip hammer, 700 pounds, and it worked on a water wheel. So the water wheel would crank the thing up, and 700 pounds would come down. And they'd take a piece of red-hot iron and put it on an anvil. And this thing would come down and hammer it and hammer it and hammer it until it got it to the thickness that they wanted.
Okay.
And then they would clean it off. In order to laminate it, you have to etch it. And etch it means you have to dip it in acid so the tin won't peel off.
Okay.
Now, they didn't have acid like we have today. So what they would take is a big pile of rotting rye seeds. And they put the sheet iron in the rye seeds for 3 days. They call that pickling. And then when they pulled it out, then they could coat it with the tin. Now they would melt half a ton of tin at a time, and they dip 100 sheets in over and over and over again. I don't know how many times until they got a thick coating of the tin over the iron.
Now, have you ever seen this process done, or you just buy it?
I just buy it. Today, it's electroplated.
Yeah.
It's steel inside, not iron, and it's done on a rolling machine.
Have you ever seen this, like you were the old style?
Well, you can tell old tin from modern tin because you can actually see little drip marks.
Oh, okay.
But I've never actually seen it made.
Okay.
You know.
But still, you're still doing it the old
Yeah.
style.
And you can. There is a guy up in Canada who is dipping it, but it's very expensive.
Okay.
And I'm kind of like the Walmart.
So you buy these humongous sheets.
Well, they come about like this
All
big.
right. And then you start. This is how you.
And then I start. Yeah.
Okay.
I start with a pattern.
Okay.
So I can show you that. Here's a pattern here, 3 pieces, and it goes to this small candlestick.
Oh, okay.
And this piece here, you can tell is going to be this part.
All right.
And this part's going to hold the candle. Actually, here's another part. This is the handle. You can see that.
All right.
And this is going to be curved around to become this.
Now, when you say a pattern, do you trace it on the?
Yep, I should tell you that. I start out by, I have a big sheet of tin, and I lay the pattern on the tin, and I mark it with an awl.
Okay.
And this is like the awl, and I'll mark it over here, and I can't use a Sharpie or a pencil because the Sharpie wears off, and you can't see the pencil.
And that's actually what's it, like etched in there.
This etches it in, so you have to work in the light,
Yeah.
And then you cut the thing out with scissors or shears. This is my favorite one right here. Okay. You have to have strong hands.
That looks heavy.
It is heavy. And here's a really nice pair of shears. It's curved.
Okay.
And this is for getting in all the little tight places, So if I was going to cut this out, I would cut it out with this curved shear here.
So do you have, like, for example, this lantern, do you have patterns for all this?
I have patterns for everything. If you go into an old tinsmith shop, there'd be patterns hanging all over the place.
All right. So like over there, maybe you could hold that up. You have what's that, a colander?
This is a colander.
Just go in and say, can I have a pattern for a colander?
Well, what you have to do is you have to actually find an antique.
Okay.
And you have to let somebody, ask someone to let you actually measure it.
Okay.
And some people will let you do that.
Is that a pattern right there?
Yeah, this.
Oh, all right.
This actually, I already cut out. This is going to become the colander when I bend it and solder it.
That does look very malleable, or is that the
It
word?
is. It is. A couple things about tin too. You can't bend it like that. It just won't do it. So you'll notice that just about everything here is straight. It can bend a little bit. Like for example, this is bent a little bit. This is a candle safe. A match safe.
Oh, okay.
They put this on their mantle to keep their matches dry.
And I really like how it's all solder. There's no, like I mentioned before, there's no nuts and bolts, no screws. It's all.
Yep, everything's just soldered, really. Yeah. So I'm going to show you how they do that. They have a stump, okay, like a log, and they have a hollowed out part of the log, and it's called a raising stump. And what you do is you put your piece of tin here, and it's covered with leather, and you'll hammer it into it, and it'll make it the roundest shape.
All right.
But
and you would do that with whatever
needs it. Yeah. The only thing I have with me.
Now that you're explaining this to me, I can't believe it. It seems like it would take more than a couple hours to make one of these.
Well, some things do.
Right.
This thing probably took me 4 or 5 hours.
This is an amazing. I don't know if you can see this. There's a candle in here that opens. I think it opens.
The back opens.
Oh, all right.
No, the metal part.
This part here? Oh, all right. So this opens in the back. You can, and then you can maybe, probably see that. This is really, and each piece.
That thing must have like 80 solder joints on it. That takes a long time.
And then you have all different patterns for.
Yes, all different patterns. The thing that's bad about tin, though, is if it scratches, you can't get the scratch out.
Oh, okay.
If it dents, you can bang the dent out, but it's always going to have a crease in it.
Okay.
So, and even though it's covered in tin, it still will rust. It's not made for outdoors. If you have this outdoors with a candle burning, it won't rust because you're evaporating the water.
Right. Now, I notice I have something here I'm going to show. This is very beautiful. I did not know this till before we started. You were explaining this to me. Tin can be painted. Look at this. This is what's this, like some kind of coffee pot or something?
Yeah, that's a coffee or a teapot. That's
coffee
called
or teapot. And
if you've ever heard of toll ware, I believe toll is French for tin, and what a woman by the name of Carol Mayer painted that the Adirondack folk school for me.
It's very, has a very folk style. What is it, just regular paint, or what kind of paint?
I'm not sure what she uses.
Yeah,
Back in the olden days, they actually used to bake the black finish on it. They called it Japanning.
All right.
But it had a lot of bad chemicals in it, so we don't really do that now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a? I don't want to say a favorite. Is there some certain items you make more of than others, or you try to make a little of everything?
Well, the way it works is whatever sells the most, I make, and a lot of mugs.
Yeah, mugs. People, okay.
At the reenactments, I go to a lot of reenactments where people have to use authentic, stuff, and a lot of guys like to drink beer out of mugs. Can I show you one of my tools?
Oh, sure. Yeah. You going to show that big blacksmith thing?
Yeah. Tinsmiths have a lot of anvils.
Okay, now that's an anvil.
That's an
When
anvil.
we think of anvils, you're thinking of a blacksmith with a big, heavy.
You do. These are all specialized, and they're called stakes. They call them stakes, and it fits into a thing called a stake plate. It's just something on your workbench made out of metal, so that won't move. And what you do is you take a rawhide mallet, such as this, because it won't dent the...
And again, that's the same kind of tool they would have used back in the...
Yes, they would have, yep.
Right.
And what you do is you bang the tin around the stake.
Okay.
And there are about 7 of these, all different shapes, cone shapes. This is specifically for a candle mold. Those old candle molds where you pour the wax in them, and there's a whole bunch of tools.
Yeah.
And that's what the tools we made.
So there's different kinds of anvils, you're saying?
All different shapes.
Really?
Yeah. And up until about 1810, everything was made like this with the different stakes.
Oh, okay.
But around 1805, 1810, little turning machines were invented. I brought one.
I should tell people that I was looking at this must keep you in shape, because that anvil thing was really heavy.
I know. And a lot of things can happen. Drop them on your foot, and by the way, tin is very sharp. I've cut myself 1,000 times.
Okay. Yeah.
But this is a turning machine, and there's about 5 of these that you need if you want to do it.
All different kinds.
All different kinds.
Different shapes.
Each one does a different thing. It fits in a mounting here called a standard, and you turn it. And what this will do is it turns up it makes a little burr, they call it, a little lip on a piece of metal. Mm-hmm. So if I was going to make a,
How about the...
Well, I can actually show you this. On this, it actually comes down a little right around the edge.
Yeah.
So that's what this will do. You put your piece of metal in here, and you roll it around, and it just burrs up the edge. So
I see. If you're making like a lip kind of...
A lip.
Oh,
yeah,
right,
that's a good word. Yeah.
Right.
So I have that. I have other ones. And by the way, this made it much quicker to make tinware. You can make tons, which is why they started using.
Oh, they started. What were we saying, after 1810?
About 1810 or so, and they'll like this. One of them puts that there. That's an embellishment called a bead.
All right. Yeah.
So they all do different things. Some of them have wire in them. There's wire here and in handles to give it some strength, or in a chandelier, and one of the machines puts the wire in.
So now I mentioned you some of your stuff are in some local gift shops, and you go to art, you go to crafts fairs and things. Mm-hmm. So how do you just sort of sell? How do you just?
Well, it's
like your wares.
I don't really want to make it into a whole big business, but I'll go to the reenactments. I have a lot of fun there, and gift shops and fairs.
Okay.
And, that's how I do it.
And then, how do you try to come up with prices? You just
I do it by the amount of hours I put into something.
Okay.
Mostly it's labor.
Yeah.
But I never really get what I really should get.
I see this dustpan. Now this looks like this would last for a long time.
Yeah, it does. And it actually works. Picks up the dust.
That doesn't look like a bad price. $15.
You want to buy it?
No, and then this is
cookie cutters.
Cookie cutters.
Yeah, let me tell you, tinware can be used for so many things. Foodware, for example, this or a colander or a cheese grater or apple corer.
Oh, okay.
Tinware can be used for lighting. For example, lanterns, chandeliers, candlesticks. Somewhere I have a wall sconce.
Okay. Oh yeah, that with the candles.
With the candles.
I'll hold this up. Maybe we can.
An infinite amount of things.
Well,
Double,
the candles in there.
triple candles you could put in there. And it's also used for storage. Something small like this.
That's a
We
glass-
could hold a glass case or a snuff box.
Okay.
It can be something large like a document box.
Well, why don't you explain these two things?
Ah.
These are kind of cool. These might be more,
mean,
these might be more historical than
Yeah.
than practical for today's.
What'd you say? Sonny, can you hear me? I tell you something. Hearing aids cost a whole lot of money. This is a whole lot cheaper. And you wouldn't believe what you can hear.
Yeah,
What?
Before we started, I didn't hold it up. It does work.
What?
It does work pretty well.
You know,
And you were
some-
telling me this is something they used in was it a rally or what?
In the 1840s, there was something called the Antirent War in upstate New York,
Okay.
where farmers were upset with rent they had to pay. It's a long story, but this is a dinner horn that was played to bring the field hands in for dinner. But what the anti-renters did is they used this as an alarm. So when the militia was coming, or the sheriff, to arrest them or put them in jail, they would blow these.
Okay, okay, so that was okay. And that would alert everyone to.
Yeah,
Okay.
a famous book on it is called Tin Horns and Calico, and this is the tin horn.
Okay.
That
That's where that word comes from?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and this is a tin a hearing trumpet.
Okay.
Oh, can I show you that?
Yeah, I was going to show you this next. Sometimes people like to have things in their house. No, I'll hold this up first. This looks very old, but you actually made this, and you made it to look old.
I did.
Explain all that, because this looks like it's like 300 years old.
Yeah, good. Well, I have a tub with a solution in it. I think it's an acid, and I dip my stuff in it. And the longer I leave it in it, the older it looks.
Now, do people sometimes want that look?
Yeah, it depends. If people have a house with a lot of antiques in it and they want it to look gold, then they'll choose this. As a matter of fact, most people like it to be a little bit aged, like that.
Okay, so this, do you do it the same technique?
Same thing, but not as long.
Okay, now this doesn't look as old as that.
That's about a maybe 10-minute dip. This thing was like about a 40-minute dip.
All right, so each minute is like 50, 60 years?
Yeah, something like that. And
Oh, this, you can tell. If I should, this obviously looks old, but not as old as that. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So it all depends on how long
you do it, and if I forget, and I come back 2 hours later, it's all disintegrated.
it'll just totally eat it.
Yeah, it'll
Really?
eat it all up. Anyway, this is the type of lantern that they used before they had glass, and it was used in barns up until the early 1900s. If a lantern like this is in your barn and it falls, the glass breaks, the candle falls out, and your barn burns down.
Okay, so-
If this should fall off the ceiling, it wouldn't set your barn on fire.
But would it give light?
It gives a really nice light. It glows, and
all right.
on the ceiling and the wall, it's like a disco ball.
Okay.
And it's interesting the way they punched it.
Is that there's like a design on there?
There is a design, and this happens to be a traditional design, but you can put just about anything on it and make it as intricate as you want. But it's just a beautiful thing when it's glowing at night. I made a mistake one time. It's punched out. You take little chisels, and if you felt it, it's
So you would
punched
do
out.
the pattern before you.
You punch it, well, it's still flat.
Okay.
And you have to be careful, because whatever you're punching from behind, it's the opposite when you look at it in the front.
Oh, okay.
So if you put somebody's name in, you'd have to put the name in
put it
backwards.
Oh, okay.
Unless you look in the mirror. But anyway, I made one by accident, and I put the punched out part facing the inside instead of coming out.
Oh, okay.
The puckered part, and I realized that it's done this way for a reason. It's aerodynamic. When the wind blows, it actually deflects the wind away from the candle with the part coming out.
So it won't blow it out. Oh.
And when I made it by accident and it was coming in, the wind funneled right inside and blew the candle out like every 2 minutes until I could figure out what was going on.
Oh, okay.
And that's the candle inside there.
Oh, very nice.
And I've seen old ones of these taken apart and used as cheese graters.
Okay.
So the Pilgrims would have used lanterns like these.
Okay.
And also, the parts are all like bent over each other. like a piece comes out, another piece comes back
grabs
like
it,
that,
yeah.
because if the candle should get really hot and melt the solder and the bottom falls out, again, it would set your barn on fire. So everything is like locked in.
Would a candle get it that hot that solder would melt?
Well,
Really?
if the candle's up too high
All right.
and it's close to your solder joints, it will do that. Yeah.
Well, this has been most interesting. I want to ask you, we're filming this the week before Thanksgiving, but beyond the next several months or two, where are you going to be the next few months? Where can people see you? Do you have anything scheduled?
At the Adirondack Folk School, there's going to be a night where the instructors sell their wares. It's on a Friday night and a Saturday, coming up in early December. I don't know the date.
Okay, well, people can go to the Adirondack Folk School website. And
yes, they can, and it's a great place to learn this craft and a zillion other ones.
And besides you're one of the teachers there, right?
Yes, I am.
Oh, well, this is a unique look into what an old art form. Very, very interesting.
Do we have a minute to talk about how this tin?
Oh, sure.
Well, the tinware was made in shops, and then it was given to peddlers, and the peddlers took the tinware along with other items to the farms throughout their area. Each peddler had his own, territory. They started out with backpacks.
So they would just load up with whatever.
Tinware, and as well as other things. They were like a little traveling Walmart, you might say. They'd have ribbon, and they'd have combs and mirrors, and maybe a little perfume. And in return, they weren't using cash so much. The farmer would give them hog bristles.
They would trade sometimes.
Geese feathers, and the peddler would bring it back, and he would trade that for something he needed. And then eventually they went to push carts and wagons, the old Yankee peddler kind of a thing.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So what kind of shop, how big is your shop?
My shop it's about a one-car garage size.
And have you ever had any mishaps working with this stuff? I know you said you cut yourself and you did the thing wrong, but any stories?
You know what they say, if it can go wrong, it will go wrong. Well, one thing I'll say is don't make tinware wearing sandals.
Okay.
Because you can tell where the pieces are going to wind up. And one day I was in Florida, of all places, and I was crossing a road and I had this horrible pain in my foot. And I got to the curb and I pulled this big piece of tin out of my foot that had gotten into the sandal there was that, and then...
Well, the solder would be hot if it dripped on you, wouldn't it?
That happens too. I have to wear an apron, and leadless solder is much hotter than regular solder. If that gets on your skin, it leaves a scar. What other things have happened?
So, you can have an appreciation for what they were doing back in the 16, 17, 1800s.
You sure can. And those guys work like oxen. When I hear how many items they produced in a day, it always amazes me. I mean, I could take my time. Yeah. They were working like mad.
And I did already mention some of those tools. I'm telling people what, they're really heavy.
Yeah, there was no room for I don't know what the right word to say is, like wimpy people back in those days.
Yeah. That's true. They were made of hardier stock back then, as they say.
Yeah.
All right. So people can find you at local crafts fairs, because you were telling me about you're not wanting to do it too much full time.
Right.
You do not have a website, so that's...
No, I don't.
That could be good in some ways.
There are other tinsmiths too. I'd like to make a plug for them. A fellow by the name of Walter Flamming up in Boston Spa.
Okay.
He taught me my trade.
All right.
And a famous one, Bill McMillan, who lives in Glenmont, he might be the most famous tinsmith in the world.
Really?
Helped set up the tinsmith shop in Williamsburg, Virginia.
Where the Colonial Village thing?
Right.
Oh, really?
So they now have a tinsmith shop in Williamsburg, and they wouldn't use the rolling machines. They would do everything with the anvils and the hammers.
Well, totally authentic for
right.
Whatever Williamsburg is, what, the 7?
Right, 1780,
really? Okay.
77. Yeah.
All right.
And so those guys are out there pounding away the tin too.
Wow.
I was walking through my house one day with a nice big sheet of tin and scratched this beautiful oil painting all along the wall.
Well, it does sound like you have, whenever you're working with these kind of things, it sounds like you could have some mishaps here.
Yes, you can.
And because I did look, the corners are very, very sharp.
Yeah, I work with gloves, with leather gloves all the time.
Okay.
And I've never had a problem with the gloves. The problem happens as soon as I take the gloves off. So you really have to be careful. But back in the 1800s and before, they didn't use gloves.
Really? Oh.
Yeah.
Well,
And by the way, I don't know if I mentioned, this whole thing started in the 1530s in Bohemia, which I think is in the Czech Republic today. And that's where they invented the idea of laminating the tin on the iron.
oh, okay.
The English found out about this process and sent over people to Bohemia to learn the process, and they brought the process back to England, and England became a huge center for tin making, because in Cornwall, England, they have tin mines. Tin is in veins in the ground, and you find the tin with a divining rod
Like the guys that did the water?
yeah, imagine that, made out of hazelwood, and they'd find it. And in ancient times, tin was a precious metal. It's an ingredient in bronze, the Bronze Age, and in brass later on. And it was transported throughout the Mediterranean by the Phoenicians.
Okay.
They would transport them in things called knuckles. A knuckle was shaped kind of like a bone, about that big, and it was put on the backs of mules.
It was a big
hunk of tin.
Was it hard or soft?
It was, not so soft it's going to drip, but hard enough,
Okay.
and transported by ships. And they've even found tin in Egyptian pyramids. So it was a real big deal back in the ancient times.
Wow, that's very interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Art, thank you for sharing your enthusiasm and your art here. And people can find you at crafts fairs and maybe some historical homes. And thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Joe.
right.
This has been fun.
All right, and we'll see you next time on Getting to Know You.